talk about the delightful times as a tabloid news reporter. You've had Tim talk, and indeed he talks about the groupies of television news. Believe me, you get none as a print journalist. No one recognises me unless they wanted to serve me with documents. So really, it's all low pay and none of the perks. But let's talk about a particular instance in 2009. It was Friday in October when I found her ramshackle South Auckland home. A cat colony. I counted at least 6 moggies in various states of health and pregnancy. They were living on this particular property down in Clover Park. At least 3 weeks of recycling sat in an overflowing bin at the top of the driveway. And talking to witnesses, I determined who I was after. This was a big case. Reports were conflicting and gathered from scenes across the city. There was a hunchbacked woman, and also her male accomplice described, and I quote, as a rough-looking Santa, but without the beard. Finding this Clover Park address hadn't been easy. Using work sanction tricks using big data, they're now deemed illegal. But I traced the ownership of the silver van used in all the crimes. The better part of a week had been leading up to this climactic moment as I marched down the long side walkway towards the broken glass front door. She was there, along with a couple of feral children, yet more cats, living, all of them, amidst rubbish and filth. The woman, wearing pyjama pants, aged in her 50s, was mostly incoherent. She initially denied everything. Of course she would. I badgered her again, demanding to know the truth. The people deserve to know, I may have said. She stammered some recollection of the crime, but she insisted that she was a victim. She then said she couldn't talk. Apparently one of her cats was sick. She then slammed the door in my face, but right before she did, she said, "Fuck off." So I walked forlornly back up that long path past the recycling bin, away from the crazy cat lady from Clover Park. This was just another job, apparently botched, for my first few months at the glorious Herald on Sunday. But why should you guys care about such a failure? Because this wasn't failure at all, this was work. This was solid work, honest work. Well, maybe not entirely honest, but you know, this was work, and it was infinitely better than what came before. For, you know, I too was once like you. I was a shambling, unemployed hipster. For a job here and there, scraping together $30 for a dozen flame beers and a packet of before gate-crashing gallery and festival openings to subsist on canapes. But despite my soft hands, and believe me, these have done not a single day of hard labour, I have managed to scrape my way ahead. And believe me, it's scraping, no doubt about it. You see, back when all this happened, it was mid-2009 and unemployment was biting. You know, I was one of those nice print journalists. You know, I used to write TV reviews for a magazine I won't name. But it was quite fun. The whole point was to write reviews of films screening on television as few words as possible. And my proudest moment was doing Star Wars. It was episode 4. It was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away from Jar Jar Binks. Full stop, 10 out of 10. That was But you see, when you don't have a job, expectations need to be lowered before they're met. And so when the chance to become a tabloid newspaperman came, I took the chance. See, needs must when Shane Curry offers. And a tabloid is a very strange place, and a weekly one particularly so. It's basically an asylum where the full moon comes every Saturday. The work will put you in touch with a great many interesting people, including drug addicts and fantasists. And that was just the recently departed news editor. He was marched a week before I arrived after his work car was spotted one too many times parked outside a pea house that was under police surveillance. In the course of my time there, you know, I've chased ambulances, I door-knocked Tony Veach, I helped break up a after-ball party involving booze. I got spat on for that, apparently. Apparently the kids actually wanted to get boozed. And also been part of a full newsroom team dialing every Brown in the South Island on a Saturday night as we were desperate to find relatives of a murder victim. Basically, a big part of the Herald on Sunday was gathering what was termed and formalised in the office as wankst. Now this is a combination of wank and angst. And essentially it's the harvesting of tearful recollections of the recently bereaved. I was told you want to get them to wank on about their angst, hence wankst. And you see, when Tim talked about the horrific time, you know, he'd called and he was the one to inform a relative that, you know, oh, their dear nephew had died, you know, that was terrible, that was nothing. Because all he wanted was confirmation. We wanted them to go on about it. And indeed, I worked there at a time where we had a particular editor who was a great man, but a strange man. And he was known to live and hope and dream of a fatal shark attack. And every summer, working on a Saturday, someone in the newsroom was tasked with calling every Coast Guard office in the country, every hour, demanding to know if there had been a sighting. I kid you not, and while I was there was not a single sighting. It turns out that Mr. Curry ended up moving on and now he runs the Herald, and indeed I think there was the first fatal shark attack in New Zealand in 30 years, just a couple of months ago. And oddly enough, Shane Curry was on leave that day. Let's go back to Clover Park, and why were they chasing this crazy cat lady? As anyone that's sort of read or watched All the President's Men will know, journalism is all about following the money, and the cat lady was running a financial scam. This was no Watergate, this was a complete farce of an investigation. See, the crazy cat lady was supposedly said to approach people in supermarket car parks, claiming she'd run out of petrol, asking for a few coins to fill up her tank. But then she'd just pocket the change and then move on to her next mark. Oh, outrageous. I convinced myself this was high stakes. Literally, a handful of people had complained. Her take, mostly coins, could have been in the hundreds of dollars. This was clearly a story that could bring down the government, and the people deserve to know. So, as I was walking back down that long walkway, past the overflowing recycling bin, I realised that I'd failed in my foolish quest to expose the inconsequential. I travelled there with a photographer, and he'd been unable to take pictures because it was down the side, and we sort of shared commiserations as we walked back to the car. But then she returned. The crazy cat lady was stomping down the pathway, well, probably shuffling is better with her hunch, and she'd taken precautions. She donned a hat, large sunglasses, presumably to shield herself from the photos that were to come, and she was still wearing her pyjamas. But most tellingly, she was carrying a chunky black high-heeled shoe, a cat, and a can of fly spray. She marched out onto the street, menacing as only a hunchback carrying a can of Mortein could be. I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. This woman wasn't large, she only came up to her chest with a hunch, and I didn't know quite how to deal with it. So I took my notepad out and stood firm in the middle of the road, trying to take down her complaints, while my colleague, who was quite chuffed that she'd managed to leave the privacy of her home and was now fair game, started taking pictures. Now, I've managed to find my notes here for what happened next, so they're not particularly clear. But neither was the crazy cat lady from Clover Park. Her barks were mostly obscenities. I do have her saying, "I'll get you charged with assault," she brayed as she hurled the shoe at the photographer. "I'll sue you," she screamed, raising the can of fly spray. "I'll call the police," was her last line, she said, as she lunged, activated the can, and sprayed me in the eyes. At this point I realised maybe there wasn't much more to get. I mean, I hadn't been able to write down much. And my glasses, now probably dusty with Mortein, decided it was time to beat a retreat. But no, this wasn't over. No, this wasn't over at all. You remember that feral child I mentioned before? Well, she emerged, and she joined the fracas, and she started arming herself with stuff from the recycling bin. Bottles started flying. The hunchback egged on her young charge, and we finally made it back to the car with like bottles of Spree and Fanta bouncing off the back window. This is not the worst job in the world. Well, actually, it may well be. They had a study out of the United States recently, sort of ranked 200 professions as to what was the most satisfying. And the newspaper reporter ranked dead last at 200. It was below lumberjacks, low-ranked members of the military. Even actors actually came in 196, which is quite funny. So, you know, getting killed on the job or having to kill for one is apparently better than what I was doing. But you know what's at 201st place? Being unemployed. It's you guys. So, you know, despite the travails of my time at the house, I only lasted 12 months, but it made me who I am today. It like put hairs on my chest, as my wife will attest. Also, no longer flinch when former Wellington property developers and football club owners text with inspirational messages like, quote, "Fuck off, you four-eyed dickhead." All with unnamed West Auckland politicians with radio live shows. Hire private detectives to stalk me and my family. If you would believe it, and probably you should, when I started that job, I sang in a church choir. Soprano. Now the only time I go to church is to gay crash funerals.